So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and start with some slides and just give you some, I think, really core information that'll help us understand this idea of how to expand and understand what I call are the three brains within us. And we have three, not just one. So what I thought I'd do is just start with this concept of whole body intelligence. And just to kind of share a little bit about my work, I've been in practice for about 20 years. And yes, most of my work has been in migraine, though I have to say, migraine was such a niche group of individuals. I started getting referrals in for, individuals that said, you know what, I don't know what's happening. I feel disconnected. I don't feel like myself anymore. I'm feeling like I'm having memory issues or focusing issues and sleep issues. And a lot of people came in with really non-specific symptoms, but enough to tell me that there was something imbalanced with their nervous system, which is what then took me to a further conversation looking at the whole system and the whole body. And with my training in Ayurveda, I started to actually look at the root cause of symptoms versus focusing on disease. So right now, I'm much more into overall well-being and not as much into diseases themselves, because I do believe it's fascinating to get to the root cause of why we even have a symptom, even if it's just an occasional sleep issue. So we'll start with going over Ayurveda and a little bit of NLP. If you haven't heard of those two areas, I'm very excited to share with you the beauty of those two approaches to understanding yourself. Then I'll get into this idea of what is whole body intelligence. And then I'll end with the three brains. And so got, kind of a good number of things to cover. So what's whole body intelligence? So whole body intelligence, I got this concept with the study of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, Ayur means life and Veda means wisdom. So it's like 5,000 years in origin. Many believe it's actually the first system of healing known to mankind. And the idea is that what these ancient sages did was they observed people, observed themselves, and thought, when individuals come in with challenges, there's a certain type of I'd say, personality that was emerging and certain types of characteristics that were emerging. And what they found was that there are three specific types of unique imbalanced states called the doshas. So it was originally based on observation that they found that individuals kind of fell into these three buckets, and we'll go over those in a second, and then started to say, well, if we treat these individuals in these three buckets with certain herbs and teas and breath techniques and meditation exercises, they improved. And so it's all about learning about how you get out of alignment, understanding what you're all about, and then using wisdom to bring yourself back into balance. And it's based on prevention of disease, not really treatment of disease. And so it's interesting to kind of know it can be used even if you have diagnoses, though the original goal of Ayurveda is to kind of prevent disease. And the goal is really to get you aligned completely in harmony with your authentic self. And it's a big goal and a big ask, especially nowadays with everything going on. But I have to tell you, as you learn the model and use it for yourself, it helps you understand every single time you feel a little bit out of alignment, you can actually use this model to figure out what is it that pushed me out of alignment, because the imbalance actually occurs when we're in conflict. Okay, so I'll pause there. And again, along the way, if you want to ask questions, feel free, because you can ask questions and you can stop me. And if I have time, I'll definitely answer it. If I feel like I'm running a little behind, I might wait till the end. So this is I think the big screen to just pay attention to. It's the elemental theory. So if you've studied Ayurveda, you've heard this. If you haven't, all ancient wisdom seems to have a similar basis. In fact, the Vedic civilization, kind of traveled Southeast Asia and created Ayurveda in India, created traditional Chinese medicine in China and Asia, and then moved over, and they actually moved a little further west and north to create homeopathy, which is very much practiced in Europe and a lot of different parts of the world. So this Vedic civilization believed that, we're all made up of these elements. In Ayurveda, the elements are air, space, fire, earth, and water. And those are the five elements that if you look at those elements, every sentient, every living being has those five elements. The trees outside, the birds that are flying, our own physiology has five elements. What's unique is the amount of elements you're born with. Okay, so you're with me so far? So there's five elements: air, space, fire, earth, and water. All of us are born with a certain constitutional type. Some have more air and space elements. We're the Vata dosha, the Vata type, personality type. The ones that are moving, going, doing, very active are considered the vata types. Those that have more fire and water elements to their physiology tends to be more medium frame. The vatas tend to be more smaller frames. And the medium frame individual, the pitta, is far more muscular and competitive, tends to be more driven on, always trying to get something accomplished. With the vata, the windy personality is someone that's moving, going, maybe takes on a lot of things, but may not be so great at finishing things, just likes to be collecting. If you're one that likes to collect books or collect different items and you have a lot of them, you might have a little bit of that energy to you. Vatas tend to be more creative. Pittas tend to be more methodical, more organized, more detail-oriented. And they're great at speaking. They're great at getting up and giving a lecture. They love to be in charge. If you're the pitta, you like to be in charge. The kapha is the individual who has more earth and water element, a little bit of a bigger frame. The earth gives them a stronger, bigger constitution, not necessarily someone that's overweight, yet just bigger, has a bigger physiology. And in fact, kaphas of the three are the healthiest of the three because they have a lot of strength to their body. So bigger bones, bigger body, and calmer, more relaxed, more introspective, a little bit more methodical in their thinking, not as action-oriented. Because the idea is it's just to kind of get a sense of what your birth nature is. And as we kind of do this program together, you're going to start thinking of what is it that shifted, that pushed you out of alignment with yourself? And so I'll give you some hints of what would happen. So let's say I am too vata. So this is one thing to keep in mind. Whatever you're born with doesn't necessarily mean that you'll go out of alignment in that state. So if I'm born as a vata, I'm a moving, going, doing kind of active person, I can actually become pitta imbalanced. If I'm born as a pitta, medium frame, competitive, more organized, I can turn into a vata. Well, what the heck does that mean? Let me share. Well, if, for example, let's say I'm a pitta, which actually is my dominant nature, and I'm always traveling and I'm always on flights going from one place to another, always moving, skipping meals, having cold drinks. I go to the airport, I always get myself a cold iced drink to drink on the airplane. If I'm doing that, cold movement, skipping meals, those are three of the most common activators to push one into a vata state. I may start noticing I land and I'm trying to go to the bathroom the next day and I can't, I'm constipated. Or I find that I'm starting to get anxiety when I travel, or I feel that I'm a little bit more restless and I don't feel as grounded. I feel like my head kind of spins. All of those are subtle symptoms that the vata energy is out of alignment. My hands might start getting dry and cold. Those are all signs of too much excess vata. The next state is the pitta. So let's say I'm born as a vata individual, kind of this thinner, moving, going type personality, always active. But then I take on a job, I become an accountant where I'm sitting at my desk all day. And let's just say in the day where I was sitting at a cubicle at the office doing accounting work, looking at a computer, looking at numbers all day, trying to settle out these end of the month statements. And my head is really focused and really in one space. Yet I'm a vata. I like to move and go. What can happen is I might start getting edgy at work. I could start getting frustrated. And why is that? Because I'm naturally a vata, but I'm being put into a pitta position. And so something like that is another example of how you can be one physiology, but start turning into another. I could start getting reflux, go to my doctor and say, well, I don't know why I'm getting nausea and reflux. What's this all about? That's because I've picked up too much pitta energy. And the answer to that is looking at your environment, saying, what is it in my life that's giving me that? Just like the one that became vata, what was in that life that created the vata wind energy? And I've done that with individuals. I've been like, you travel too much. You need to cut down your travel to reduce your energy. So in pitta, it may be looking at different ways to be creative and change your environment at work, or maybe change your job. And that's been a tough conversation to have with some people, but it's a big one. The last state's withdrawn. This is the kapha. So remember, the vata is the moving air and space element. Pitta is the fire, earth, and water. Kapha is the earth state. And when you have too much earth, this is an example of too much earth. So let's just say I got up in the morning, I decided to have cheese and crackers because I was craving cheese and crackers. And then I went and had a big cup of coffee with a lot of cream in it. And I started eating heavy things, cheese and milk, and I started having dairy, and I started feeling sluggish, and I started getting congested. That is a sign of too much kapha. It's too much earth, and you can get that from your foods. So in the three different examples of the three states, one was induced because of too much activity and movement. The next was induced because of a kind of a work environment. And the third was induced with food. And the thing about these three states is that all of us can fall in and out of these three states really easily. And the goal is to align with the birth state. Most of us actually have imbalance, and most of us have imbalance in like one or two. We're either too vata and too pitta, or too vata and too kapha. And the goal with Ayurveda is to get a sense of what is it that pushed you out of alignment? What specifically in your life, the work, the food, the travel, the friends, I don't know, the toxic relationships that we might have. What is it that pushes us, and what can we do to bring it back into harmony? So here I've studied Ayurveda. I gave you like a super quick overview of Ayurveda. But now I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of NLP, and I'll tell you why I studied it. Because remember, I trained in neurology, right? So my original training, I was board certified in neurology, and I was working in a pain clinic, and I'm seeing people come in chronic severe pain. They had failed all these different clinics, and were looking for alternatives. So I studied Ayurveda because I thought, you know what, the Western meds at that time, this is when OxyContin was being used a lot, and a lot of narcotics were being used. I wasn't a big fan of those. I was like, I better use something else for my patients because I don't think this is the right direction to go. Glad I was making that call at that time. And I went and switched into Ayurveda and started using that in my clinical practice. I got people to say, wow, you're so vata. Let's change this. Let's change your diet. You're so pitta. Let's do this. It was great. It worked for a very long time, and it still works to this day. I wanted more. So what I did was I studied NLP. What is NLP? N stands for neuro, L stands for linguistic, language, P stands for programming, your program. So it's your nervous system language program. What that basically means is what is your brain circuitry thinking, feeling, doing, and behaving? And what is your own circuit of language and communication? What do you have? What have you inherited from your family, from your parents, from your upbringing? And is your actual program a program that's aligned with you, or is it not? So again, why would I study this after Ayurveda? What I liked about it was NLP goes into why you become vata, why you become pitta, why you become kapha when it comes to your brain type. And so what I realized was that everyone has a certain brain program. They have a certain way of operating. All of us do, myself included. All of us do, because we are brought into this world with an environment from mom and from dad and from our community and from our religion and from our cultural upbringing. We're brought in and we're exposed to all these individuals, peoples, and circumstances. And we either buy into that program, inherit that program, and believe in that, and it fits with our personality, or we take on a program that is in conflict with who we are, and thus we get out of alignment. And thus I choose to fly every week out of work, and I choose to skip my meals because I'm not connected with myself, because I'm following a program that I was given to be busy all the time, for example. So you see, the question is, why do we do that? Why do we carry those programs? And this is what NLP gives us, which is a little deeper. Ayurveda gave me a lot, and NLP goes even further. So what's interesting is what they did was to get a sense of how this model worked and how this even got created. NLP was, it was to this Richard Bandler, that was a mathematician that was paired up with Virginia Satir, who's a therapist, who's a really successful therapist. And he was a mathematician. He's like, I want to figure out like exactly what you're doing to get the outcomes you're doing, because you seem to have these incredible outcomes with your clients. And what he did was he modeled her as a successful person, and he watched her language patterns. He watched how she worked with people, with their thoughts. He realized what she was doing very successfully was getting people to get out of their stuck programs. And how successful people succeed in life. If you talk to someone who's successful and say, or if you guys have succeeded, you'll know you do certain things. You're actually thinking acting and speaking in a certain way to create the success. And so I was intrigued by that model. And I said, okay, well, then I want to study what these individuals are doing, because it's always nice to be more successful in all areas of life. So this picture, there's a lot in here, but I'll kind of talk you through it because it's a super, I think, interesting picture. What it tells us is that there are these different external events that come into our lives. And you and I could be, the example I use is, imagine we're both at a theme park, we're right in front of the roller coaster ride. We're in the, in line waiting to get on the roller coaster ride. And then I start to notice, the woman maybe next to me, she seems like she's a little nervous. I feel like she's kind of pacing a little bit, or kind of showing an expression. And I pick up on that and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't be on this line. She seems a little nervous. My son standing next to me is paying attention to the kid over to the left, who's eating his snow cone and laughing and oh my God, I'm so excited. So my son's starting to feel really excited. And we're both at the same ride. We both have the same external event. But you see, what I'm picking up on is the woman that's nervous. What he's picking up on is the kid over here is eating his snow cone and having a good time. So what we do is each of us has a program to pick up and to put direct attention towards what we think is important. And that's based on our early program. And what we do is, because there's 2 million bits of information that come in per second to our nervous system, we can only take in 126 bytes of that information. It's just not possible to take in 2 million. So we delete, distort, and generalize, meaning I delete out the happy kid over there. I distort this and say, this is going to be a scary ride. And I generalize, maybe say, oh my gosh, all of these roller coasters are so dangerous. Why am I getting on this ride? Or my son is deleting the woman that looks nervous. He's focusing on the kid that's having a good time. His distortion is, oh my God, he's having a snow cone. This guy's excited. I should feel excited. And generalize, gosh, roller coasters are so much fun. Look at how much fun everyone's having in line waiting for the roller coaster ride. Same ride, completely different feeling. Different parts of our brain lights up. This is what we all do every moment of every day. You choose something, I choose something, you choose something. There's too much information. We can't choose it all. So we decide what to choose. The thing that happens is then you create an internal representation, which is what I told you. My internal representation, roller coaster rides are scary. His internal representation is roller coaster rides are fun. And then we go into state. The 3 states, the fiery is the pitta state, the windy is the vata, and the earthy is the kapha. So because I'm like, oh no, this woman looks nervous. What am I thinking? What am I doing? I'm going to die. Why am I on this line with my son? I'm too old. My head goes to spinning. And then I go into freeze. My neck gets a little tight. I may close down my posture. And this is the beginning, you guys, this is the beginning of disease. And what I mean by that is, if I keep doing that over and over and over to different things in my life, that was a roller coaster example. But let's say I'm doing that as I'm sitting in the car. Maybe I'm the passenger, seeing someone crossing the crosswalk, and I'm like, oh, you're going to hit that person. Where my husband's driving and think this person's going to pass very easily and drive right past her. He's not even thinking the same thing I'm thinking. I'm seeing it a different way. Same scenario. What I visualize and what he sees are different. I go into freeze state. He's totally calm. So what happens is, it's our brain that interprets our world. It's called MOW, the model of the world. And we do things to only take in what we think is important for us and for our nervous system to do what? To keep us safe. The goal of our whole being is to not die, is to stay out of danger. That's the goal. And so the challenge really is figuring out, how do we not overreact? How can we just allow ourselves to see the best possible things in front of us? How do we direct our attention to the things that don't turn on our reptilian brain, that don't put us into freeze state, that don't put us into fiery? Fiery is actually the fight. Think of fight, flight, or freeze. Pitta, fired up. Pitta gets angry, gets pissed off. The vata, out of alignment, really windy, it's anxious and nervous and what ifing. The kapha, the earthy, depressed and hedonic. Why am I doing this? I don't want to do anything. I just want to go inward, gets negative, feels a little victimized. So the thing is, it's our interpretation of our world that creates that. So what NLP does is changes your interpretation of your world. Is that not kind of cool? I thought that was pretty cool. So I gave you the roller coaster line. I'm going to give you one more. So this is a little bit more of an experience we'll do together. So if you have a comfortable spot, just kind of sit in a comfortable space, and just, close your eyes for a moment. And I'm going to have you think of a couple of examples. I'm going to have us imagine we're eating a sandwich. Okay. So in the first example, what I'd like you to do is just with me, just take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. One more breath in through your nose. And exhale through the mouth. Now imagine yourself sitting in a beautiful garden. Beautiful garden. You see these plants and these flowers all around you. You can even smell, gosh, can you smell those roses? I can smell the roses. You smell the fragrance of the rose. And now imagine you're seeing some birds flying past you. Oh gosh, how beautiful are those birds. They're chirping. Oh, they sound so lovely. You're smelling the roses. You're hearing the birds. You decide to start having your lunch and you see your beautiful sandwich in front of you. You grab the sandwich with your hands, this delicious sandwich. You start bringing it up towards your mouth. Slowly bring it up, 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 up. And now take a bite. Great. Now swallow that yummy bite of sandwich and open your eyes and come back to the room. Okay. Now clear the screen. We're going to do another example. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Bring yourself back into your breath. With me, take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. Exhale through the mouth. Here you are sitting in the airplane. You're in the aisle seat. You're flying. You're enjoying your flight. The stewardess comes and she brings you your sandwich. You open up your tray table and you put it down. Suddenly, the fasten seatbelt line comes on. This plane starts moving. Oh, it's getting bumpy. It's getting bumpy. It's moving side to side. Uh-oh, it's getting kind of bumpy. The plane is moving side to side, side to side. You're seeing the man next to you put his hand on the armrest, holding and gripping the armrest as the plane is moving. It's bumping, bumping, back and forth, back and forth. You're hearing some noises. You're hearing the tray table moving up and down the aisles. And then you open your eyes, you grab your sandwich, and you bring your sandwich up and you take a bite. And now open your eyes. So did you guys notice, and I know that was kind of a quick example, but did you guys notice how even your sensory system, though both those examples, you weren't present at either one of them, your brain can create a reality for you. Your brain can easily create a reality. And the first reality was one that was a very calming reality. And the other reality was one that was a little bit more reptilian, fear-based, right? And if you were able to connect with that, you probably felt a little something. Do you guys feel a little something like in your stomach when you're on the, because I don't know, when I get turbulence, I don't feel so good. So for me, that's an example that really gets me going. But like when you start to feel, and you see how I use sensory experiences in the first one, you smell of rose, the sounds of the birds, Now, I did this kind of quickly because of time. We don't have time to really use that exercise. I'll do it over 5 minutes to get a really good sense of the feeling of it. But what happens with the nervous system is we use all 5 senses: smell, taste, touch, hearing, and vision. We use all 5 senses. And what we're doing with those 5 senses, and we're bringing those senses into our nervous system to really interpret, is this danger or is it not danger? But it's amazing how you can actually create a sensory experience using your 5 senses. So if those experiences can be created, why aren't we doing this more often? And this is the goal. What I want to share with you guys today is using your sensory body to reprogram your system. Because in the same scenarios, those 2 that we had, you can use them in a way to actually harmonize your brain. You can use the same example, but use it in a different way to actually create brain harmony. So whole brain intelligence basically is aligning all 3 of your brains. So your first brain is the central nervous system. This is the brain that, as neurologists, we spend way too much time talking about. It's the brain in our heads, the thinking brain. Well, when I think about the thinking brain, it's the brain that actually is really operating in a way to keep you focused, keep you alert, make sure you're engaging in your executive functions, getting up, getting to the bathroom, showering, all those things. It controls motor, sensory body, all of that. What we forget about is the second brain, which is the enteric nervous system. That's the brain that's in the gut. That's your feeling brain. And very often, because we as humans think far too much, we analyze and think and think and think, we don't connect with the feeling brain. We're too busy thinking. And when you don't connect to the feeling brain, that part of the brain, which is, by the way, connected to the 5 senses. So if you got a little feeling in your tummy during that experience, it was because your feeling brain was on. You turned it on, which is something that I want you guys to do more often, because you want to connect with the feeling brain. That brain actually processes your emotions and gives you intuition when it is fine-tuned. The third brain is the microbiome. These are the bacteria. I call them the acting brain because they're the ones creating neurotransmitters. Remember, your gut makes 95% of your serotonin, makes your B vitamins. It helps you create a strong immune system, especially right now more than ever. Creating a very strong immune system. 70% of your immune system is in your third brain, in your gut. So you want to make sure all 3 of these brains are aligned. And because of this program, we're going to kind of focus on the first brain. But what I'll tell you is there's 3 that each one of them should be really balanced for you to feel completely balanced. And when I say intelligent, I mean connected with your truth, connected with yourself, intelligent with who you are at your core. It's the personality, the imbalanced you, the vata, pitta, kapha, whatever that energy state is that's out of alignment. That's the non-intelligent version of you. That's the one that's going to say, oh, I can eat that sandwich. That's fine. When probably the last thing you should be eating is the gluten sandwich. You should probably be having the soup instead. But you're following your intelligence, your intuition in life. So to get whole brain intelligence, all 3 of these brains need to be kind of working. And it's top down and bottom up, meaning your first brain, if you're stressed, will actually impair, like I mentioned earlier, your ability to connect with your second brain. And your first brain, if you're stressed, can actually create bacteria and microbiome that's imbalanced at the gut level. And there's actually studies showing this. So if we work on the first brain, you could actually balance out your second and third brain. And if you work on your second and third brain, you can balance out your first and second. It's kind of bottom up and top down. It's not just one is in charge. Okay. So the most important thing I learned, if there's going to be a big word for today, you'll learn, it's this one. It took me a while to figure out how to say it. It's called pragya parad. And pragya parad is a mistake of the intellect. And what it was believed in ancient Ayurvedic medicine is that pragya parad, mistake of the intellect, was the cause of disease and distress in life. Not being connected, not having alignment in those 3 brains, not kind of hearing your intuition. It's what leads to disease and leads to distress, because maybe I'll choose people that aren't the right people to hang out with because I'm not following my intuition. Maybe I'll take on a job that isn't the right job for me. I'm not following my intuition. Maybe I'll eat certain foods, as I mentioned, because I'm not following my intuition. The more you get connected, intuitive, and aligned, you just kind of start to know who to spend time with, when you need to stay in, who to, work with, and what kind of work you should do, even in terms of family dynamics, how to connect with them, how to have relationships that are harmonious, even with difficult family members, which we all have. So how do we do that is by being more connected and being more intuitive and balancing each of these 3 brains so we can be the highest version of ourselves for everyone around us, our kids, our family, everybody. whole brain intelligence is really creating this balance. So I'm gonna kind of get into that a little bit. And so what we're looking at, this is a side kind of view of the brain. The hypothalamus to me is probably the most important part of the brain because it's like the size of my pinky, tiny little size, but it's the central regulator for your entire system. The hypothalamus is believed to be really, I call the divine internal mother, the divine internal father, that's basically guiding you on how to operate. So for example, the hypothalamus tells you when you should eat lunch by giving you a hunger signal. The hypothalamus will give you a sleepy signal when it's time to go to bed at night. The hypothalamus will let you feel thirsty. The hypothalamus is regulating you because the hypothalamus is trying to keep you out of danger. It wants you to be alive and functioning. So it's going to say, hey, it's noon. I'm going to give you a hunger signal. But then what we do as humans is we ignore the hypothalamus. Oh, I'm too busy to have lunch right now. I've got way too much going on. So I skip lunch. That's where we start to get imbalanced. And that's where we lose intuition, you see. It's because we start to do these things when the body's trying to talk to us and we don't listen simply because we may be caught up in the world around us. It's not we're trying to avoid the signal. It's just our world is kind of demanding. So we can't hear the signal. And this picture, what it shows you is the three parts, the main parts of the brain. The neocortex is the top left. That's the thinking brain. That's the part of the brain that's actually doing a lot of that thinking, the beliefs. How many of them are good, positive beliefs? We're going to get into this in a moment. And how many are negative? It all happens here. The limbic brain, which is on the right, that green part, that's a little bit more on the side. That's the emotional brain. That's the feeling part. That's connected with the enteric nervous system, which is actually the 100 million neurons that are located within your gut. That's the second brain. It directly communicates with the emotional brain, which is why you feel butterflies in your stomach when you walk into somewhere where you feel uncomfortable. And it could be excitement you're feeling, or fear, or happiness, but you feel it. You often feel that in your stomach. And the reptilian brain is your survival. It's the part of the brain that's just make sure her heart is beating, his heart is beating, make sure we're getting enough oxygen in. That's the reptilian brain. Problem is it turns on, and it turns on fiercely when we're seeing danger. Okay. So that brain unfortunately turns on the sympathetic nervous system a little too often when we go into danger mode, like I was mentioning before. So it's interesting, the prefrontal cortex, which is that front part of the brain, thinks about emotion. The limbic actually feels emotions. And there's a great book, Upward Spiral. He goes into this entire process of like how these parts of the brain communicate. My goal with you is to get you to start to clear the baggage in the prefrontal cortex so you can hear more of the second brain and you can open that up and really feel what you're supposed to be feeling. So the area that directs the information, it's called the anterior cingulate cortex. And I'm bringing this up because I think a lot of people may not even realize that there's structures of the brain that are trying to keep you balanced. And what the ACC does is it actually connects the limbic and the prefrontal cortex. It gathers information from the outside world, like I was mentioning, the roller coaster ride. And it's like, oh, okay, so she's seeing this woman that looks stressed out, so she should feel stressed for this ride. So my ACC is picking up danger because it's looking at this one woman. I'm putting attention towards her. My son's ACC was pointed towards this little happy-go-lucky kid that's having a snow cone. So he's seeing everything as non-dangerous. Same situation, two different interpretations. How do we get your ACC to not see danger? That's what we're going to work on, because that's the goal, is not to see danger where danger isn't there. Now, if you're crossing the street, a car is coming, you better pay attention to that and get out of the way. But this is not something to be turning on all the time and too often. That's what creates the state imbalance. So this is the area, if you think of yourself, start thinking going internally here. Do you tend to dwell on things? Are there any specific areas of life? Think about family, think about relationships, think about career if you have one, think about personal growth, areas of personal growth for yourself where you get stuck, or spirituality you're stuck on. Think about even, your health. Is there something that you dwell a lot on, that you spend a lot of time dwelling on? And do you tend to dwell on the negative aspect of things, or do you spend time on the positive aspect of things? Most people, it's a 5-to-1 ratio that we need to do. If we have a negative thought, we're supposed to think 5 positive thoughts to overcome it, because most people, their brain automatically goes towards the negative. So we're going to get to breakout in just a second. The reptilian brain, I want to have you ask yourself, what is the purpose? Well, we know the purpose is to keep you safe, so it'll protect you, looking for danger. But is your reptilian brain on too often and far too long? And if so, are you always seeing danger when you shouldn't be seeing danger? And if so, where? Do you see danger with the family members? Do you see danger with the career? Do you see danger with your health? Where are you seeing danger? Because that's what we're going to use as an exercise to start thinking about this next thing here. In the first brain, one thing to keep in mind, you have a left side of the brain and the right side. The left is very logical, very organized, very detailed, very analytical. The right is actually very creative. It's very intuitive. It's very much in the big picture, where the left is like very detailed. So do you have a dominant part of your nervous system, part of your brain? Is one side kind of more on than the other? Kind of be curious to hear from you. We're going to Q&A. What side of your brain is more on? And as much as you can kind of start to get to know about yourself, which energy, vata, pitta, kapha, what side of the brain, left versus right, which part of the brain is most active? Is it your first brain, your second, or your third brain, which is something that's a little bit more advanced? This is how you can dig inwards. And I think of what Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. I really believe we're here to examine ourselves, examine our lives, and get to our own truth. And then when we do that, we can really feel blissful and feel happy. So one structure that you should know about the amygdala, these are tiny little like almond-shaped little areas of the brain. What's interesting about the amygdalae, the two of them, they evaluate something is threatening outside of your conscious awareness. So let's say you walk into a room and you're like, I feel this gut like intuition of something, and I'm not sure even what it is. Your brain, your amygdala actually picks it up before you're even consciously aware. So it might be picking up on something that you haven't even noticed at the first brain level, which I think is fascinating because they did an exercise and how about this? Fearful faces were perceived much more rapidly than happy or neutral ones. And these are picked up by the amygdala. So for example, if you're in a grocery store and you're checking out in line, and if you could just even smile and just spend some time smiling, I know we have our masks on and everything, but you can see it in the eyes, say a few words of kindness to the person that's at the checkout, checking you out. Imagine the energy exchange and how that person's amygdala can feel more relaxed and how that person's reptilian brain can come down because they're hurry, seeing the long line, feeling like they have to move fast. So this is an exercise that actually I often recommend. It's called the smiling face exercise. Is start smiling more, start showing yourself as a positive energy individual, because what happens is you influence others. And then what happens is what they do is they smile back at you. Your amygdala can quiet down too. And it sounds very simple, but starting to plug in some of these things to reduce your reptilian brain and to quiet it down will really help your prefrontal brain release negative thought patterns. So one of the experiments is just to try to like smile, even in the car. When I'm driving, I'll just smile. And it's fascinating how I've even smiled, and the person next to me in the other car will smile back. It creates a nice energy for yourself and for the person around you because your amygdala is picking up on this at a very, very early stage. And so what happens is we see something, it's the alarm stage. That's where the amygdala and the anterior things that pick up. The hippocampus is the memory of like, oh my goodness, last time I was on a roller coaster, I was really scared. So maybe that throws into my alarm phase of that ride and gets me to look at that lady more than looking at the fun, loving kid. I have a belief. My prefrontal cortex is like, oh my gosh, the roller coaster is scary. And then I have an unconscious reaction that happens actually at your amygdala level. And then I have a coping. So what you want to do now is you're going to start thinking about your beliefs. Think about what triggers you, maybe what situations, what people. Is there a scenario that is your repetitive scenario that triggers you? If you have a negative thought, you're supposed to actually think 5 positive thoughts to overcome a negative. I don't know about you, but I don't do that very often. And that's an important thing to do, not only for yourself, but for others, because it takes 5 thoughts to quiet down the reptilian brain when one negative thought enters. How about that? Okay. So I love this line by Louise Hay. The path to healing is not about learning something new, but unlearning the belief patterns that make you sick. And I was reading Louise Hay back, 20 years ago. And I remember when I first had read some of her books, and I'm a big fan, and God bless her soul, she's passed. Really, that idea of shifting the thinking, shifting their programming, it was really, I think, started a lot with her and others in the field. So just to review, we went through the prefrontal cortex, the limbic brain, the reptilian, the intercingulate. You guys learned a lot of the neurology today, the amygdala and the fear center, and left and right brain. I just want to get an overview of those different areas and know that you, at the end of the day, have complete control on training your brain. You can do a little brain fitness, just like you could train your dog, to walk nicely next to you when you're taking a walk. You can train your brain to not be so reactive and to start seeing things as non-dangerous.